do you see Kennedy's assassination as a special kind of car crash?
No, because it isn't a car crash, but my name is Philip.
And I'm Thomas, and welcome back to another episode of the Wertow podcast. And today we're talking about David Cronenberg's Crash. And Philip, my question is why?
Because we have both seen this film and I think we disagree on it immensely, and so this makes for a very interesting conversation if we were actually both able to speak English. But yes, as far as I know, you don't like this film, or to be more precise, you dislike everything about this movie except for the music by Howard Shore, who also made the music for like Seven, Silence of the Lambs, Lord of the Rings, and all the other David Cronenberg movies, except for like his first, I don't know, 2 or 3 or something like that. Obviously a great composer, I love him, but I love everything about this movie Crash except for the music, or to be more precise here also, I like the music, but I don't think that it fits together with this movie. And so what I was wondering about is that maybe you can either like the music or the rest of the movie, but you cannot really like both things together, because even if they are both great on their own, they don't work together that well. And so I really wonder if you would enjoy this movie completely with a different score, even though you really like the score. What do you think about it, Tom? Or should we maybe explain what the movie is about or something like that?
Yes, I will do both. And it's an interesting hypothesis, but I mean, there's obviously no way of telling if it's even remotely accurate. I'm sorry.
Well, we could do an empirical study about it, but yes, continue. I will go into detail on this one later.
I mean, I'm almost certain that there are people who enjoy both the movie and the music together. But okay, what this movie is about? It's about car crashes.
It's about people having a car crash.
About it.
People having a car crash fetish. So
yes,
it's one of the greatest premises for a story in general ever.
Okay, the thing is, this premise is more interesting than the entire movie. And it's like, if you just say or read or hear the words car crash fetish, what your own mind will come up with is gonna be 100 times more interesting than the entire film, in my opinion, and that's really my big problem.
I think the movie is more interesting than the premise, because it goes so much deeper than that. And no, you cannot come up with all those brilliant ideas that David Cronenberg, who is like a great genius, and also the novelist who wrote the book that this movie is based on, what's his name again?
No idea.
He's a pretty famous author, actually. And yes, no, I think that you can even watch this movie and entirely, don't even think about this car crash fetish thing. I think that's obviously just like, in a sense, a cool premise, hook or something like that. But it's not really important to the movie. I think you're correct about that it's not actually about a fetish, in the sense that we now get like a psychoanalysis of these characters. What this movie is an extremely bleak, cold, unemotional, distanced look on modern society, on the way that humans are interacting with their surrounding, with day-to-day objects like cars and so on, but not only cars, but all of the surrounding in general. I mean, I watched this movie like a few weeks ago again, and there are so many beautiful subtleties in this film. For example, at one point they get like tattoos of crashed car signs. So there's this group of underground car fetishists, in a sense, and they are getting those gang tattoos to an extent, and then they are asking the tattoo artist for dirtier tattoos. The tattoos should not be clear or anything like that. They should themselves be dirty and imperfect. And I think that the real fetishism is of this high class, high tech world that gets destroyed. So it's also this wish to break out of this manufactured cleanness and so on. And they are calling the tattoos like prophecies, and that's why they have to be messy and dirty and imperfect, and exactly like the cars that they want to crash. So in a sense, they want to crash this perfect, luxurious consumer culture. And I also, for example, one of my favorite shots in the entire movie is near to the end, is when Ballard, the main character, he's like a film producer, and he is like sitting on the set, and he has an affair with his camera woman, and the scene begins just with a wide shot of the set, and we see the camera in the middle of the room just standing there for a few seconds, and we immediately realize that the camera also is an object of fetishization. Not only the cars, not only the car crashes, but also the camera and the filmmaking aspect itself. And then we see the camera woman, who has like this affair with the producer, go to the camera and removing the camera, and we see Ballard, the main protagonist, sitting behind the camera, and he gets revealed. But the interesting point is, what is the camera woman wearing? She's wearing jeans that are completely ripped apart everywhere, and you can like almost see like her entire ass and so on, because the jeans is completely ripped open everywhere, and it's just a part of the design of her clothing. But that's definitely an incredibly deliberate choice there for this woman to dress this way in this scene. And we see that Ballard is bored by the entire filmmaking process and also by this woman, and he previously had an affair with her. But this movie is also again about sexual frustration and also the wish to die in the end. And yes, so her jeans itself have to be a crash, like something that was sober and clean before and is now half destroyed and decaying and so on. But Ballard is already bored with it, because this kind of aesthetic is already affirmed inside the consumer culture. So he can no longer enjoy this part of destruction and adultery anymore. And in the end, we see the main character Ballard and his wife having a car crash together, and then he runs up to her, and she's like in the wreck of her broken car, lying on the ground, and he's just laying beside her and asking if she's hurt or anything, and she says, "No, I don't think so, nothing happened." And he says to her, "Maybe the next time, maybe the next time." And this is obviously a repetition of like the first scene in the movie when they are talking about their affairs, and she asks, I think he asks or she asks if they had an orgasm with their affair, and she or he says no, and then of course this line, "Maybe the next time, maybe the next time." So in the end we see that also this wish for an orgasm is also the wish to die here. So yes, it's a very deep, disturbing, macabre, and quite poetic film that's in a sense completely transhumanist, in the sense that there are no character studies here really. There is like no depth to these characters. We don't really see the psyche played out. We only see the people as we see the machines, just as strange robots colliding into each other. And there's something very beautiful about this. So do you appreciate this movie now that I have opened you so many new perspectives on it, Tom?
In fact, you said something really funny to me about the character of the director, that he's tired of this aesthetic and so on. And that's probably exactly how I felt when watching this film, because I think you're right in saying that it is already so integrated in modern society or whatever that I didn't feel like watching anything I hadn't seen before when seeing this film. I mean, all these concepts of, okay, yeah, let's break the system or whatever, or the whole pain pleasure thing, fetishizing and so on. Those are like all things that are pretty common nowadays, and that's why I felt like the film didn't give me anything new.
Yes, but I think it shows those things in a really quite fresh and also in an extreme sense that's also incredibly poetic. So this movie was screened at Cannes and so on, and it was like, it's the most scandalous movie of this year, definitely, but also in David Cronenberg's filmography, which actually says a lot to an extent, because he's known for making quite violent and sexual movies that deal with very taboo subject matters. But yes, I think, for example, one of the scenes that I love so much is when this gang is on an actual car crash in the streets, and they are just wandering through the scenery of broken cars, of hurt people lying on the ground, of dead people in cars and so on, and they're just making photos and enjoying the scenery to an extent. And there's this beautiful shot when the wife of the main character just sits beside one of the car crash victims, and that's also a woman, and they're just sitting beside each other, looking at each other, smoking a cigarette, and then this woman who was in the car crash is like looking a little bit to the side, and you can see that there are like pieces of glass in her entire face and so on. And there's such a sublime beauty about this, and it really makes you see things in a completely different way. For example, in the last movie that Cronenberg released, called Crimes of the Future, there's like also such a beautiful scene where like two characters meet. They haven't seen each other for a long time, and in a sense they fall in love together, and they look at each other. It's great acting. It's such a tender atmosphere between them. And then the one person says to the other, "Oh, just being near you makes me want to cut my face off." And it's so beautiful in this moment, and you get that it's this in a sense this gesture of love, but in the same sense it's completely subversive, and yeah, just makes you see things and listen to language and to concepts in a different way, which is something that I'm extremely drawn to, also in a philosophical sense. I mean, David Cronenberg is obviously an intellectual and so on, and he has like a background in science and studied biology and is a novelist also. So yes, you're definitely right that those themes have been well dealt with before, and maybe even, I wouldn't even say better, because seriously about this, the transhumanist landscapes where the merging of the human body and technology and so on is taking place in such a subtle way, this is probably the best movie I can think about even to deal with this. I mean, it feels like a science fiction film, but there are no science fiction elements in it, and still those characters feel like robots or like AI or something like that. Yes, in an incredibly strange way. And yes, I don't even know how to explain it other than to describe those beautiful moments that this movie has, and it's only like 90 minutes long. Yeah. So it gets a lot of those things in such a short runtime, I want to say.
I mean, okay, I want to talk about this little quote from Crimes of the Future that you just told us, which is a film I haven't seen, so I'm missing the context, of course. But to me, what you're describing sounded more like a punchline to a joke, kind of. And I feel like that's also part of my problem with Crash. By the way, it's not like I completely hate this film or anything. I mean, I can see the artistic value or whatever, but yeah, I'm not a big fan of the film, and part of it is because it feels like yes, really bleak and dry, but also yeah, like those scenes could be setups for just jokes, with the punchline being, oh, it's subversive, and that's not necessarily bad, but I also don't think that it's not very interesting to me, and all those beautiful moments you seem to have experienced while watching this film, I just didn't have the same experience watching it. I mean, that's of course highly subjective, so yeah.
I don't know, I think you're just missing the right side, the right view for such a movie, so maybe you should just watch more Cronenberg, and then you
Philip, I am the table.
That's also great, but yes, maybe we will talk on the GMF podcast about this song by Metallica one day, but
because it's called The View.
Yeah, that's great, Tom, that's great. But yes, first of all, I think that a completely artificially created score, the score that we hear now is like with electric guitars and so on. I think this is not fitting, because in an electric guitar you can always feel something emotional, I think, to an extent. And I would prefer this film with a like completely digitally created score, that was created entirely on like a computer, so that it's more soulless. And yes, that I think would be more fitting for this film. Would you agree on that one, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, I love this modern music. Beep, boop, boop, ba, boop, boop, beep. Boop, 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 ba, boop, boop, beep.
Boop, boop, ba? No, Tom, I think what you mean is boop, boop, ba, boop, boop, bee.
Beep, boop, boop, ba, boop, boop, ba.
I think that, are you a friend of SpongeBob?
What?
Don't you know this one guy, Herbert Kackmann? He's a friend of he's a friend of SpongeBob. But no, in all seriousness, no.
No, I get what you mean. Yeah, it would fit the film because it's emotionless and artificial and machine-ish, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
And those are pretty much the aspects I don't like about this film. And yeah, I'm not saying it doesn't fit the concept. It doesn't appeal to me.
Well, alright. Then I would like to ask you another question, because I think David Cronenberg has actually a lot in common with another great director that I dearly love, and that's Michael Haneke, of course. And I see a great connection or dialogue between this film and The Seventh Continent, which is the first feature by Haneke that was released in cinema and so on. So this connection is primarily between those characters that are completely intertwined in their materialistic surrounding that's only focused on consumption and so on, and the destructiveness that this brings with it. So do you see a connection there too, Tom?
I might if I had seen the film.
Alright, and the last movies by Haneke and Cronenberg, so Crimes of the Future with Cronenberg and Happy End with Haneke, they actually have they got the same response from me, because I watched both of these films, and what I thought honestly was, oh, I love this, Michael, David, those lovable old jerks are still doing their tricks, and I think that that's almost the opposite of what they probably want me to experience with those movies. So they felt incredibly comfortable to me because they are, in a sense, repeating the same tropes that we know Cronenberg and Haneke for. So yes, the point is that there is a natural end to which you can drive those concepts. For example, in Crash, as we talked about it, that Ballard, the main character, is at some point himself bored and needs to go to even extremer things, and all of this would end in his own death, of course, in some kind of suicide that they are all striving towards. And this is why I think that the movie actually ends at the perfect point. So this movie Crash really drives all of those concepts nearly to the extreme, nearly to the natural end of like suicide and so on, but without ever delivering that, because it would be incredibly problematic. I think you would agree if Cronenberg would actually show like some suicide of Ballard at the end, because this could be read as something heroic or as the natural end of his journey or something like that. And I think it's immensely important that Cronenberg is not not giving this final satisfaction in the end, as the main characters say, and in the end nothing happened really. And I love this. This is the extreme nihilism of Cronenberg that I love so much. And if you watch more of his movies, you will see this, that he will formulate this grand epic concepts about, the transformation of the human body by modern technology, as one of the characters in the movie actually says. But then later he just admits that that's all bullshit, that these grand philosophical ideas in a sense are practically meaningless. And yes, Cronenberg is doing this in almost all of his movies, that he will formulate some grand ideas and then completely deconstruct them. So you think, all right, this is like a dark, nihilistic future we are looking into. But then Cronenberg comes along and says, no, even that is bullshit. There's really nothing behind this.
But the thing is, if you're watching the film and you already realize it, the rest of the runtime is wasted, isn't it?
But this emptiness itself is something that I think is beautiful on its own sake. I mean, this, yes, that's what I think we have the same disagreement about this than I think we also have with Spring Breakers. I think Spring Breakers is also a brilliant showcase of sort of surface culture, and that's not really satirical, but can be read satirically. Would you say that your problems with Crash and with Spring Breakers are, in a sense, the same problems?
I mean, probably, yeah, in the sense that I think both films are fine, they are well made, whatever, but I can't get anything out of them because you said it's very superficial, at least the topic the films are about, and empty, and to me just boring, uninteresting, underwhelming.
But this emptiness and the surface level, that is what's so interesting about them. In The Matrix, because we've talked actually in the German version of this podcast about Spring Breakers and The Matrix, and we compared those two movies because those two movies are great to compare. And in The Matrix, this shot of like the green numbers running down like the black screen and so on, like the actual shot of the Matrix in an abstract sense, all right?
Yeah.
And that's in a sense what both Spring Breakers and I think also Crash, but much more Spring Breakers, are doing, is like creating those shots, but just in a much more subtle way. You know what I mean? Like they are, in a sense, pure abstractions, especially in Spring Breakers, like those first montage in slow motion, naked people dancing on the beach in slow motion with a Skrillex song over it. The meaning of those shots are exactly the same as the green numbers on the black screen in The Matrix. They're just like this completely abstract concept, and there is, I think, no deeper meaning in any real sense to it. But this is, I think, to show the emptiness in what would normally be considered a deep and sophisticated subject matter to an extent is the actual interesting thing about it.
But see, that's like about the depth that it has to scroll down the YouTube homepage, isn't it? And I do that every day. Like, yeah, you see this, all these videos of people doing dumb shit or doing actually important shit, of ruining their lives or living their dream or whatever. And I scroll past this, and that's what it feels like to watch these films.
Yes, but if I would say now, but Tom, what you just said sounds so amazing. You're scrolling down those lives and people are fucking up, people are doing great and so on. You can see snips and bits out of the lives of millions and millions of people all around the world. Some of them are long dead, some of them might be AI, they might not even exist in the sense that we exist or anything like that. Isn't that amazing? Isn't there something wonderful about this, something very interesting? And now you are saying no, but that's actually just so bland, so boring, so surface level. And I think this is what Cronenberg is also doing in Crash. As I've said, he's like formulating these grand ideas and then deconstructing them. So it is a deconstruction on the deconstruction. And I think that you may just don't get that. You probably think that it's a deconstruction about modern society, but I think it's a deconstruction on the deconstruction on modern society. And that's why, in a sense, it becomes a purely aesthetic experience. So I think we have reached now our final conclusion here. I can't go any further. But yes, if I would go further, I would probably get into an actual David Cronenberg film and my head would just explode, like in the beginning of Scanners, which is, of course, what the one image to describe Cronenberg's entire vision is. Such an overload of ideas that your head explodes, and those bits and pieces of your missing head are then the actual clean beauty that remains. So yes, don't you think that's interesting, Tom?